Welcome to Electric Perspectives, a podcast that explores the innovations and policies shaping the electric power industry and how America's electric companies are delivering the resilient clean energy we need to strengthen America's energy security and power our daily lives. This show is brought to you by EEI, the Edison Electric Institute, which represents all U.S. investor-owned electric companies. I'm your host, Brian Real.
EEI 2025, hosted earlier this June in New Orleans, explored the forces defining and shaping the electric power industry today and in the years to come. This is part one of our EEI 2025 highlight series. Today, you'll hear from EEI Chair Calvin Butler, President and CEO of Exelon, Entergy Chair and CEO Drew Marsh, and Entergy Louisiana President and CEO Phillip. We were thrilled to have these leaders join us live at our annual Thought Leadership Forum to discuss how America's electric companies are enhancing grid resilience and working to meet the growing demand for electricity. Efforts to keep customer bills as low as possible also were front and center throughout the conference. If you want to learn more about this year's conference, visit electricperspectives.com. Without further ado, let's hear from Calvin.
We now are joined by EEI Chair Calvin Butler, who serves as President and CEO of Exelon Corporation. Thank you for taking some time to chat with us.
Brian, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So what's been your experience so far at the conference? What are some of the key messages you've heard discussed?
This is one of my favorite conferences that we do get to have. It's its annual meeting. What you have at this one and what we've seen is that so many of our partners show up and are excited to interact with one another. The hub is an amazing opportunity to go in and see what they're up to and talk about innovation in our industry, because that's going to be at the forefront of where we move over the next decade. And what I've always recognized is that we can't do this without our partners. And this hub is an example of where they're going and where we can go together.
Congratulations on being elected chair.
Thank you.
While serving as vice chair the past 2 years, what lessons have you learned being part of that leadership group and working with outgoing chair Maria Pope and David Campbell, who's serving as vice chair again? What have been some lessons working together in that role?
I think the biggest lessons that have been learned over the past year is that EEI's voice matters when it comes to energy-related issues. I want to give particular credit to Maria as the chairperson and to Pat for stepping in as the interim leader, because what they demonstrated is that we are all better together, and EEI is larger than one person or one company. It's about all of us. And that is what I've learned, is that as I step into this role of chair, it's much bigger than my role as chair. It's about making sure the voice is unified for all of our companies and that we continue to have a presence on Capitol Hill and within our states.
We certainly appreciate the engagement from you as well as your CEOs on the board. It really does help guide engagement on some of the key issues. So knowing that this really is a pivotal moment, you talk about customers, making sure that we're meeting their needs. What are the types of challenges and opportunities ahead of us, and what do you plan on focusing on as chair?
First of all, let me just say, I do believe what distinguishes EEI from other trade associations is CEO engagement. The CEO engagement is a differentiator. So you take that to what issues that we're facing. We've identified a few. One, first and foremost, the ability to provide reliable and resilient power for our communities. And whether you call that energy security or resource adequacy, we have to continue to make sure the lights come on when our customers expect it. That is first and foremost. And then you take the issue of affordability. It doesn't matter if we're the most reliable utility in the nation if our customers can't afford to keep their lights on. And what I often say, some of my customers have a challenge if their bill increases $1. I have to be very sensitive to that issue and ensure that we're doing the right things, as we have to continue to invest capital to help them afford the power that they expect for their families and for their jobs. And I would also say the last piece is that we have to continue to be proactive in addressing regulations that make building or investing in capital more seamless. Right now, it's taking too long to get the capital in the ground to move our industry forward. So that is something that is very important to us. And I think the last piece I'll hit on is really focusing internally at EEI. EEI refresh, as I like to put it, is that I'm excited about new leadership coming in with Drew's leadership. I'm excited about his vision for the organization and being part of that. And we have to ensure and convey to the staff that they're so important to really shaping this industry moving forward. And me being part of that is exciting for me.
As CEO and as chair, one of your responsibilities, of course, is forward-looking and future planning. So we're here at EEI 2025 discussing a lot of emerging trends, and some folks have their crystal balls, what we're going to see next. What do you think are the trends that are going to shape the industry for the next several years?
I think the trends that are setting the industry really deal with innovation. I think what we're going to see is that battery storage, grid enhancing technologies are all going to come in play to enhance the utilization and the capabilities of our infrastructure. I also believe we need to put more time and will invest more time in the security of the infrastructure, security of the grid. And then the third piece that we can't leave out is this portfolio approach to providing energy to our customers. What do we not know that is coming over the next 10 years, and be open to our partners identifying those opportunities and moving it forward? I do believe we're going to have a reset of the capacity market because we have to. We cannot continue to do business as we've always done and expect something different. So innovation from technology and innovation from policy are going to have to converge so we can move this industry forward.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us. And I know you'll be speaking later with Victor Peng, former AMD president. So looking forward to that discussion as well.
Well, Brian, thank you for having me as always, man. And I'm excited about where we are today, but more excited about where we're going.
Thank you. We're thrilled to be joined by Entergy CEO Drew Marsh. Thank you for taking some time to chat with us here at EEI 2025. And thank you to you and your team for being the host for us here in New Orleans.
Excellent. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
A major theme of this conference is that the industry is meeting the skyrocketed demand for electricity. What factors are driving that growth? Are you seeing that here in the Gulf South region that Entergy serves?
Absolutely. We are seeing growth from a number of different regions in the economy. A lot of it comes from things that we've been experiencing for many years. Onshoring, for example, of manufacturing. In fact, our industrial sales growth has been over 5% dating back to sort of the Great Recession. And that's been driven by traditional industrial activity, refining and steel making, auto manufacturing. But increasingly now we're seeing LNG and other things come in. But they're still more in the traditional space. And now we're adding in the data centers. And so, over the past, 12 or so years, we've been growing at about a 5% compound annual growth rate. And we actually see that accelerating up to about 12 to 13% right now. There's a number of reasons for that in our service territory, and a lot of them come from some of the natural advantages that we have here along the Gulf Coast. We have the ability to access global markets because we have a number of ports. We have the Mississippi River. We have available workforce, and we have supportive communities. We also have low commodity prices, low energy prices. That includes our electricity here in this region is some of the lowest in the country. But collectively, energy is very cost effective in this area of the country. And that has led to a bunch of manufacturing coming into our area. Our customers have an advantage against other places in the world. And given the ports and the infrastructure, the ability for them to export has been very strong in our area. So those are all advantages. And then because there has been so much growth, the scale itself is actually an advantage now as well. So we've been talking about hydrogen hubs as an industry over the last few years. We already have a hydrogen hub. We have hydrogen pipelines, we have hydrogen storage, we have hydrogen producers and consumers, everywhere from here in New Orleans all the way around the Gulf Coast to the Houston area. And so that has continued to build upon itself. If somebody wants to do hydrogen, this is a great place to come. The United States collectively has been a focus for investment over the last several years. And when people come to make large industrial investments, they look at all these advantages along the Gulf Coast, and then they think, oh, well, maybe I'll go here. So that's been a key driver behind everything. Now you add in the data centers, and the data centers are really stomping the accelerator on the industrial sales growth for us. And that's a broader trend, right? It's not just in our service territory. Some of those advantages still apply in terms of, welcoming communities and available workforce. But exporting from a data center through a port is not really what you're after. But there are some advantages to our service territory for those as well. All of that collectively is what we are seeing in our service territory, and some of that people are seeing across the country.
And another major theme this week is going to be resilience. And we often like to arrange a pre-conference tour activity that kind of highlights the work that our member companies are doing. And we had a group of attendees see an exhibit at the Presbytere about the impact and the legacy of Hurricane Katrina, with some discussion about how Entergy and the city work together to strengthen community resilience. What kind of resilience upgrades were made to Entergy's critical energy infrastructure following the devastating hurricane? And in the time since, how have you seen those resilience investments perform, and what sort of benefits have they delivered to customers?
Yeah, so we've actually made investments in a number of different areas, and we are coming up on the 20th anniversary of Katrina, so it's a good time to reflect on some of the things that we've done and the changes that we've made. I'll start with some of the basic elements of it, and that includes going back and saying, okay, well, thinking about the world that we lived in kind of prior to Katrina and then the world that we live in today, and the importance of electricity in those two worlds. Prior to Katrina, when I go back to when I was a kid, right, we're using number 2 pencils and chalkboard, and we are playing outside as kids, spending all of our time outside, and nobody's using a computer to work. Those days are gone. And that is where a lot of the infrastructure was built for that kind of world and that expectation, decades ago. Katrina kind of highlighted for everyone, hey, we're actually moving into a new space. That new space demands electricity as a life necessity, as an economic necessity, as a community necessity. And that has caused us to change our standards. So in the wake of Katrina, we changed our standards in terms of, okay, so if you are near the coast, what kind of infrastructure should you be building? And so that goes from the standards for poles and the designs for poles and the standards for a substation and the design for a substation, and those have continued to evolve as we've learned and more over the last 20 years, to the point where if you go out to Grand Isle here in Louisiana or the Bolivar Peninsula in Texas and you see a substation, it is large. It is big. It is a fortress. It is elevated. It is able to withstand massive winds and storm surge and keep the lights on. And we've actually seen, to your question about have you seen some success with that? Absolutely. So last year we had Hurricane Francine. It came right over the space where Hurricane Ida had come through just a few years ago. And since then, we built all of this infrastructure to the new standards, and the power never went off on the island. It is an island in the Gulf of Mexico, and a Category 2 storm came right over the top of it, and the lights never went off. And so that's, we're excited about that. We're very excited about that. And it shows you that the infrastructure changes and the standards that we are adopting can work. Now, there's a lot more that we still need to do. There's a lot of investment that we still need to do. And so we actually have authorization from the state of Louisiana, from the city of New Orleans, and from the state of Texas to invest over $2 billion in infrastructure improvements that are changing out really existing infrastructure. It gives us the opportunity to go say, okay, well, this pole was put in place in 2001, but it was to a standard that doesn't apply today. We're still, depreciating that because in our regulatory process, we might have put a 50-year depreciation. So there's still some quote unquote life left in that pole. But now we know it's not to the right standard. We want to change it out. Instead of just waiting for the storm to knock it over, this authorization gives us the opportunity to go back and replace it today. And so that is helping accelerate stuff. It's part of a larger program that we had proposed. It's about a $15 billion program. We're sort of considering this phase 1, but we are getting underway with that. And there are a lot of other learnings around how we are organized, how we communicate with our customers. There's been a ton of innovation around the communication. Now we have outage maps. You can actually see the circuit that comes down your street on our outage maps and whether it's on or off. It's very simple. It's either green or red. And that's been a real advantage for our customers as well. So there's a lot of things that are going on. We actually do field interviews after storms. So our utility CEOs, whether they're in Texas or New Orleans or in Louisiana, they're talking to the media with our crews who are working so everybody can see what we're actually dealing with, the trees that have fallen on lines. I mean, we have very large trees. When that happens, it makes it very difficult to manage that. And of course, people love trees, so they don't want to trim them back too far. But when they fall over, they take out the line, and then our crews are out there. We're actually communicating from those same places. And so those are all examples of things that we are doing to improve our response, as well as improve the reliability and resilience of our system before the storm comes.
Another important piece is customer affordability, of course. As you're planning out and making these investments in resilience, how are you factoring customer affordability at the same time?
That's a great question. So there's three different ways that we're really thinking about this. One is going back to the growth that we were talking about earlier. Because we have all of this growth, the scale of our system is getting larger, and that is giving us the opportunity to spread any storm costs across a much bigger base, which lowers the cost of the storm for all of our customers. That's an important feature. The second thing is we are embarked on a continuous improvement effort on an ongoing basis throughout our company. We call it our Path to Premier, but that is helping manage costs. And if you look at our track record over the last several years, we've been able to manage O&M costs to a relatively stable level, despite all of the inflation and other things that have been kicking around in the economy. So we're really proud of that track record, and it's helping keep costs low for our customers so that we can invest in other things that can really benefit them. And the third thing is we've really changed the framework, particularly around resilience, in which we think about costs for storms. So there is the cost, of course, of if the storm comes and it knocks down a pole or floods a substation, what is the cost of replacing that? And so if we were to go and make that investment, we're avoiding that future cost, ideally. That will justify some investment, but it doesn't justify all the investment. Really, to get to a place where we think about what the actual customer experience is, we have to think about the broader experience of the customer, and not just that their lights are out, but what does it mean for the economy, for what they're trying to accomplish for their jobs and for the broader community, or even what they have to do to respond to the storm. So, we're including now the broader costs that are the lost economic investment that's out there because a storm came. If you have a 20-day outage, that's a lot of economic activity that is lost. And of course, if that means that now somebody can't go to their job, somebody can't open their restaurants, someone has spoiled food at the grocery store, someone has to travel to another place and then stay there sometimes in a hotel room and then travel back and have all the uncertainty associated with that, they may not be able to work. Kids are out of school. There's so many things that are going on in the economy that are costs that aren't picked up in just the avoided cost of the pole getting knocked down. But when you add all these other costs up, well, those costs dwarf the investment that you would be making to really make the grid more resilient to those storms. And so we've had that conversation with our retail regulators in Louisiana. We've had the conversation with the city council here in New Orleans and in Texas, and it's been very receptive. And so when we expand it out, the question doesn't become whether we should do those investments. The question becomes how fast, because there still is a bill impact and there is an upfront cost to doing this against the ongoing costs in the future. But we've already seen some of the fruits of that labor with our storm recoveries in the last couple of years. The time of that is coming down. Our ability to respond is coming up. And our communities are very thankful for those investments because they want to get on with their lives as fast as possible as well. So that's how we're thinking about it. Being mindful of what the customer impact is at all times and using that framework to evaluate the investments that we would like to make.
So you sound pretty optimistic about being able to deliver a brighter energy future for the customers and communities you all serve.
Absolutely. We are very excited about it. And the thing about it is that there is tons of opportunity beyond just, this new customer shows up or we're putting up this infrastructure. I mean, we try to really think about the holistic impact on all of our communities. And if we can improve the resilience and the reliability of our system, if we can make it more sustainable, if we can keep the costs down for our customers at the same time, while we are attracting these new customers and investments into our community, that gives us an opportunity to really increase the outcomes for all of our stakeholders. Our communities are going to benefit, our employees are going to benefit, and the rest of our customer base is going to benefit from all of that. So we're excited about all of this because we feel like it's a bit of a virtuous cycle that we have an opportunity to kind of get on here.
You and the Entergy team have been tremendous partners as we've planned EEI 2025, so it's exciting to finally be here, and thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you in New Orleans. We're going to have all of our friends in the industry here, and we're excited to show off our community. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And now a quick word from our sponsor. Sense is transforming grid intelligence using next-gen AMI 2.0 meters, analyzing microsecond-level data to deliver real-time insights. More reliability, more efficiency, more visibility. Supercharge your operations with software built for the future. Visit sense.com/utilities. That's sense, sense.com/utilities.
Next up, we're joined by Phillip May, President and CEO of Entergy Louisiana. He spoke on a panel about proactive grid resilience. Really appreciate you taking some time to chat with us today.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So what topics are you most looking forward to hearing about just generally while here at EEI 2025?
Well, first of all, I'm very excited to be here in New Orleans, our home city, and we're welcoming all the electric companies and the vendors that are showing up for this. It's going to be a great several days. So what I'm looking forward to is just hearing how other electric and energy companies are dealing with this incredible growth opportunity, the economic development aspects of that, and how we're preparing for our future. Our future requires us to think differently about how we provide electricity, particularly around resiliency because of the new threats we're seeing to grid power.
And some of our attendees had the chance to see some of the resilient grid infrastructure that was built in the wake of Hurricane Katrina to strengthen the system. Can you talk to us a little bit about the kinds of upgrades and enhancements Entergy is making to the grid? I know we touched on this a bit with Drew Marsh as well, but it would be great to see kind of what some of the big focuses are here in Louisiana.
Yeah, no, and I was here for when Drew was going through that, and I'll make some of the same points. The world is a very different place today than it was back 20 years ago when we had Katrina. I know in the wake of that, one of the things I remember is cash was king, right? People didn't have a lot of power, so they're writing down your lunch order on notepads and so forth, and you're dealing with cash and so forth. And, I can't remember actually carrying around cash in the last several months. It's a different world. Power is absolutely necessary to the society we have today. And the world that we deal with has greater threats from increasingly strong and frequent storms, different types of storms. We're dealing with ice storms and hurricanes in the same year here in Louisiana. So the net of that is following Katrina, as you had heard. We needed to change our standards for how we build our grid. And what we did is we put in place 140, 150 mile an hour standards for our poles and infrastructure as we get close to the Gulf Coast. And that works great, but it's a slow process. It's only when you replace a pole when it's broke, or only when you build a new line will you see that new infrastructure. What happened after our 2020 and 21 storm season, that was Hurricane Laura, Category 4, Hurricane Ida, other storms as well, but those two Category 4 storms really made it clear to us that we needed to deal with a new reality, the importance of electricity to our society, to our economy, and the fact that we were facing new, stronger threats from these kinds of storms meant we had to up our game. We had to move faster. And so we went forward and put in place a resilience program in which we would proactively go out and change existing infrastructure to make it stronger, better, so we can get our economy back up and running quickly after a storm.
And you just mentioned the importance of proactive investments in grid resilience. How have conversations evolved over the years, whether it's with regulators or customers or other key stakeholders, about the need to make these investments before a storm hits?
Yeah, so, this is not something that everyone sort of fell into naturally. Not everybody was a cheerleader behind this immediately. You had to, some cases, actually experience the effects of storms and the weather and so forth, whether it was an ice storm or wildfires or hurricanes, tornadoes, all of those kinds of things. It's increasingly clear that we need to design for a different future, and it's also clear that power is fundamental to economic development. Power is fundamental to our daily lives. And so we have to make sure that we can provide that service more quickly and turn the power back on so our economy can get up and running again. So part of that, though, is thinking differently about how we account for that. Now, we can go in after a storm and replace a pole. Usually that's going to be a lot more expensive because not only are we paying for the pole, we're paying probably overtime, we're paying for someone to sleep in a hotel, we're paying to feed them, we're paying for everything that you can think about. in that transaction. So that pole is going to cost many, many multiples of what a normal blue sky pole change out would be. But on top of that, there's also societal cost. In Louisiana, more than half of our citizens are hourly workers. Those folks who work, their jobs may not be available when the power is out. If they work in the hospitality industry, a hotel or a restaurant, if that power is down, they're probably not working. If they have to evacuate, when Harvey happened, the estimated cost for a family of four to evacuate, $1,200. That number is more like $1,500 today. Average family in Louisiana, few of them have more than $1,000 saved for an emergency event. So when you start thinking about the impact on the economy, the impact on our customers of having that power out, the more quickly we can get that power back on, the more quickly we can get that economy back up, the more quickly our citizens, our customers, can get back to work and have their lives back in place.
And because Louisiana has been hit, unfortunately, by so many storms in recent years, you also have seen the superpower that is the mutual assistance process, with crews coming in from other companies, other states, to support the restoration and working with munis and co-ops on that as well. What has been your experience in recent years of just how that process has played out?
You know, the mutual assistance program is incredible because it allows you to have a massive force show up to do the work on the damage we had. And unfortunately, we have bigger and bigger force available. And part of that is because of our experience from storms, we've gotten better at managing very large teams. I think during Katrina, we were only able to manage a little more than 10,000 workers to come in, even though the significant damage that was caused. But, during Hurricane Laura in 2020, we had 26,000 workers show up, and we're able to manage that. And then later during Ida the next year, more than 28,000 workers show up. So that is a huge advantage that we have, to be able to have all those folks that come in. And when that happens, we're able to put the grid back up much quicker. When Laura happened in southwest Louisiana around Lake Charles, we essentially had to rebuild the entire grid over a short period of time. That would not have been possible without the help and the mutual assistance of our companies and our vendors throughout the United States.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I'll note that if you want to hear more about grid resilience from Phillip, he was on a recent episode titled Enhancing Grid Resilience for a Reliable, Secure Energy Future. And that certainly is a key theme here at EEI 2025 this week.
Thank you.
That's our show for today. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, or wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about EEI's members and the electric power industry, visit our website at electricperspectives.com.